Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, consider subscribing and leaving a like. It helps more than you know. A lot of you have told me you watch these videos late at night. So before you settle in, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. This is a long one. Get comfortable and let's begin. On the afternoon of November 2nd, 2016, Keith Papini returned home from his job at a Best Buy store in Redding, California. What he found immediately unsettled him. His two young children, a son and a daughter, were still at daycare, but his wife, Sherry, was supposed to have picked them up. She hadn't. The house was empty. Her car was in the driveway, but Sherry was nowhere to be found. Keith tried calling her. No answer. He then opened the Find My iPhone app on his phone and tracked the location of Sherry's device. The signal led him to an intersection near their home, Sunrise Drive and Old Oregon Trail, less than a mile from the house. What Keith found there was chilling. Sherry's cell phone was lying on the ground, face up, with her earbuds loosely coiled on top of it. Several strands of her blonde hair were tangled in the earbuds. Keith knew immediately that something was wrong. This didn't look like a phone that had been dropped during a struggle. It looked placed carefully, deliberately, as though left as a signal. At approximately 5:50 p.m., Keith reported his wife missing to the Shasta County Sheriff's Office. Officers launched an immediate search. Witnesses reported seeing a woman matching Sherry's description jogging in the area earlier that day, wearing a pink top. Ground teams canvassed the neighborhood. Helicopters scanned from above, but there was no trace of the 34-year-old mother of two. Within days, the case became national news. Sherry Papini was photogenic, blonde, a stay-at-home mother from a quiet Northern California community. Her disappearance hit every cable news network, every true crime forum, every social media feed. Strangers organized search parties. A local businessman offered a substantial reward for information. An anonymous donor reportedly contributed over $50,000 to the effort. Keith gave emotional television interviews, pleading for his wife's safe return. The community of Redding rallied behind the Papini family. People tied yellow ribbons around trees. They held candlelight vigils. They prayed. And then, 22 days after she vanished, on Thanksgiving morning, Sherry Papini reappeared. At approximately 4:30 a.m. on November 24th, 2016, a passing motorist on County Road 17 near Interstate 5 in Yolo County, roughly 150 miles south of Redding, spotted a woman stumbling along the roadside. She was thin, emaciated even. She was wearing restraints, a chain fastened around her waist. Her nose was swollen. There were bruises and rashes across her body, ligature marks on her wrists and ankles, and burns on her left forearm. Most disturbingly, there was a brand on her right shoulder. The word Exodus had been seared into her skin. It was Sherry Papini. She was rushed to the hospital. Keith was contacted. The nation breathed a collective sigh of relief. She was alive. After 3 weeks of fear and uncertainty, she had come home. In the days and weeks that followed, Sherry told investigators her account of what had happened. She said she had been jogging near her home when a dark-colored SUV pulled up. Two Hispanic women, one older and one younger, forced her into the vehicle at gunpoint. She said she was held in a room, chained to a pole in a closet with a bucket of cat litter for a toilet. She described being beaten, deprived of food, and forced to listen to loud music. She said the women kept their faces hidden, sometimes with masks, sometimes by covering Sherry's head. After 3 weeks, she said they released her on the highway and drove away. The story was harrowing. The injuries seemed to corroborate, and for a time, most people believed every word. Keith spoke publicly about his wife's condition. He said Sherry's nose had been broken. Her hair had been cut off. When she was found, she weighed just 87 pounds. He described the brand on her shoulder and said the captors had beaten her repeatedly. The family asked for privacy as Sherry recovered from her ordeal. Composite sketches of the two alleged female captors were released to the public roughly a year later, based on descriptions Sherry provided. The search for these women became a major investigative priority. Law enforcement spent hundreds of hours following leads, chasing tips, and running down suspects across multiple states. But behind the scenes, from the very beginning, something didn't sit right with investigators. The first and most obvious red flag was the phone. FBI Special Agent Courtney Lanto noted in an affidavit that Keith Papini himself found the way the phone was positioned strange. It was face up with the earbuds neatly arranged on top of it. If someone is grabbed in a violent abduction while jogging, their phone doesn't land like that. It lands wherever momentum takes it. This phone looked staged. The second red flag was Sherry's description of her captors. She claimed 2 Hispanic women had taken her, but investigators found no physical evidence supporting this. Forensic analysis of the clothing Sherry was wearing when she was found revealed DNA from 2 sources, one male, one female. Neither matched Keith, and neither matched Sherry. The female DNA was found on her body. The male DNA was found on her clothing. When the samples were run through the FBI's combined DNA index system, there were no matches. The case stalled. A third red flag emerged when investigators examined Sherry's cell phone records. 2 phone numbers saved under women's names in her contacts actually belonged to men. Sherry had been communicating with people her husband apparently didn't know about. Then there were inconsistencies in her story. In some tellings, the brand was a punishment for trying to escape. In others, the details shifted. She claimed difficulty remembering certain events, but recalled other moments in vivid detail. She described hearing that really annoying Mexican music being played loudly by her captors, a description that would later draw criticism for its racial undertones and for casting suspicion on the Latino community in the Redding area. The composite sketches of her alleged captors rattled the local Hispanic population. Members of the Northern Hispanic Latino Coalition reported that Latino women in the area feared they might be mistaken for the suspects. Investigators had essentially been given phantom descriptions of people who didn't exist, and real people bore the consequences. Despite these doubts, the investigation moved slowly. Sherry stuck to her story. In 2017, she applied for and received over $30,000 from the California Victim Compensation Board, money she used for therapy sessions, ambulance bills, and home improvements. She also received Social Security disability income. She committed to the narrative fully, living as a victim in every sense of the word. For years, the case went cold. The 2 Hispanic women were never found. No vehicle was identified. No location where Sherry had allegedly been held was ever discovered. Then came the breakthrough. In the years following Sherry's return, investigators kept working the case quietly. The male DNA found on her clothing remained an open question, a thread that, if pulled, could unravel everything. By 2020, advances in forensic technology and database expansion finally produced a lead. The FBI matched the male DNA to a man named James Reyes, an ex-boyfriend of Sherry's from roughly 15 years earlier. They had dated before she met Keith. Investigators tracked Reyes down and brought him in for questioning. What he told them blew the case wide open. Reyes said that Sherry had contacted him in the weeks before her disappearance. According to him, she said she needed to get away from her husband. She told him her marriage was unhealthy and that she was afraid. She asked for help. Reyes, who said he still cared about her, agreed. On November 2nd, 2016, the day Sherry disappeared, Reyes drove hundreds of miles from his home in Costa Mesa in Southern California to pick her up. Sherry got into his car. He drove her back to his apartment. She stayed with him for the next 22 days. During that time, according to Reyes, Sherry was not restrained. She was not held against her will. She came and went as she pleased. She was free to leave at any time. He said he believed he was helping her escape a bad situation, not participating in a hoax. But then came the details that left investigators stunned. Reyes told them that Sherry asked him to inflict injuries on her so her story would be believable when she went back. He said she asked him to hit her, but he refused. Instead, she persuaded him to hold a hockey stick while she ran into it to create bruises. He said he pelted her with hockey pucks at her request. And the brand, the word Exodus, burned into her shoulder. Reyes said Sherry asked him to do that too. He also told investigators that Sherry appeared to be deliberately starving herself during her stay, losing weight rapidly so that she would look emaciated when she returned. She was manufacturing the evidence of her own victimhood, detail by excruciating detail. When Sherry was ready to go home, Reyes drove her to the stretch of highway near Interstate 5 and dropped her off. She put on restraints that had been prepared in advance, and she waited for someone to find her. It had all been a performance. Reyes was cooperative throughout the investigation and passed a polygraph test. He was not charged with any crime, armed with Reyes's account. Investigators called Sherry in for another interview in August 2020. Her husband Keith sat beside her. They told Sherry they had matched the DNA on her clothing to James Reyes. They told her that Reyes had shared his version of events. They laid the evidence in front of her. Sherry deflected. She insisted that she had flirted with other men, but maintained that 2 women had kidnapped her. She seemed unable to accept that the wall of lies she had built over 4 years was crumbling. Keith Papini sat in shock. According to investigators, at one point he stood up and walked out of the room. He later told investigators words that carried the weight of years of deception. He said he felt like the fool who stayed the whole time, the husband who believed, who fought for her, who stood beside her on national television and pleaded for her safe return, while the whole thing had been fabricated. The investigation continued for another year and a half. Then, on March 3rd, 2022, more than 5 years after her disappearance, the FBI arrested Sherry Papini at her home. She was charged with making false statements to federal agents and mail fraud. The fraud charges stem from the more than $30,000 she had collected from the state's victim compensation program for a crime that never happened. 6 weeks later, Sherry signed a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to 1 count of making false statements and 1 count of mail fraud. 33 additional counts of mail fraud were dropped as part of the agreement. Days after the guilty plea, Keith filed for divorce and requested sole custody of their 2 children. On September 19, 2022, Sherry Papini stood before the U.S. District Judge William Shub for sentencing. Before the judge spoke, Sherry addressed the court. She was tearful. She told the judge she accepted full responsibility. She said she was guilty of lying and of dishonor. She said that what was done could not be undone. Judge Shub was unmoved. He noted the staggering number of people who had been affected by her deception, the law enforcement officers who spent thousands of hours searching for phantom kidnappers, the community that lived in fear because of a fabricated threat, the Hispanic community that was unjustly viewed with suspicion, and of course her own family. The judge sentenced Sherry Papini to 18 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. She was ordered to pay approximately $310,000 in restitution, covering the costs of a multi-agency investigation she had triggered, the victim compensation money she had fraudulently received, and the disability payments she had collected. Sherry was released from prison in August 2023 and placed in community confinement in Sacramento County. Her full release came in October of that year. The fallout from the case extended far beyond Sherry herself. The Redding community felt betrayed. People who had donated money, organized searches, and tied ribbons around trees felt that their compassion had been exploited. The Latino community, which had endured months of unwarranted suspicion, was left with justified anger. Keith Papini, who has since spoken publicly for the first time since the arrest, said the deception still haunts him. He said that every single day, Sherry committed to the lie. He said she made everyone believe the story was true. Her husband, her children, her parents, the police, the entire nation. Their children, now under Keith's custody, are the ones who bear the heaviest cost. They will grow up knowing that their mother's most public moment, the moment the world watched and worried and prayed, was a fabrication. The question that haunted this case from the moment the truth emerged was simply, why? Sherry Papini never provided a coherent explanation. Her defense attorney cited long-standing mental health issues and described what he called a fierce storm inside her mind. Prosecutors called the hoax deliberate, well-planned, and sophisticated. The judge and the assistant U.S. attorney both suggested that even Sherry's tearful courtroom statement was itself a form of manipulation. At sentencing, the prosecutor stated that even independent mental health experts could not identify a typical diagnosis that explained Sherry's behavior. Her actions didn't fit neatly into any clinical framework. She had spent months planning the disappearance. She had abandoned her young children. She had inflicted injuries on herself or directed someone else to inflict them to make her story believable. And she had maintained the lie for more than 5 years, collecting money and sympathy the entire time. Was it a desperate escape from a marriage she felt trapped in? Was it a thrill-seeking act by someone who craved attention? Was it something darker, a pathology that even professionals couldn't name? Whatever the answer, the consequences were real. Hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars were wasted. A community's trust was shattered. A family was destroyed. And the credibility of real kidnapping victims, people who genuinely need help and deserve to be believed, was undermined. Sherry Papini's case is a reminder that not every missing person story ends the way we expect. Sometimes the truth is more disturbing than the disappearance itself. Our next case takes us across the Atlantic to Belfast, Northern Ireland. It involves a 14-year-old boy, a bicycle ride on a summer evening, and a series of events so strange and disturbing that, nearly 6 years later, the questions still haven't been answered. His inquest is taking place right now in early 2026. And the more you learn about this case, the less any of it makes sense. On the evening of Sunday, June 21st, 2020, 14-year-old Noah Donahoe left his apartment on Fitzroy Avenue in South Belfast. It was the height of summer, the longest day of the year. 3 months of strict COVID lockdown had just begun to ease, and Noah told his mother, Fiona, that he was cycling to the Cahill area in the north of the city to meet friends and work on a school project. Noah was a pupil at St. Malachy's College, one of Belfast's most respected grammar schools. Friends described him as intelligent, curious, and kind, a boy interested in philosophy, music, and languages. He left the apartment wearing a cycling helmet, a jacket, a hoodie, shorts, and trainers. He had a rucksack on his back containing his laptop and some school books. He climbed onto his black mountain bike and pedaled off into the warm summer evening. It was approximately 5:40 p.m. What happened over the next 18 minutes would become one of the most agonizing mysteries in Northern Ireland's recent history. CCTV footage, pieced together from cameras across the city, captured Noah's journey in fragments. He is first seen leaving his apartment building with his bike, helmet on, backpack strapped to his back. He cycles through the city center heading north, which is consistent with his plan to reach Cahill. But then the footage begins to tell a different story. Somewhere along his route, Noah's rucksack disappears from his back. The backpack, which contained his laptop and school materials, was later found to have been taken by a man named Daryl Paul. a career criminal and heroin user with nearly 200 prior convictions. Paul told police he found the bag near a university building along Noah's route and attempted to pawn the laptop at a cash converter shop. He was later jailed for 3 months for theft. Investigators found no link between Paul and Noah's death. But the disappearance of the bag was only the beginning. As the CCTV footage continues, something deeply troubling unfolds. Noah begins shedding his clothing. First the rucksack, then other items. A jacket is left draped over a wall. Trainers are found on the ground. A helmet is spotted near a lamppost. In the final frames of CCTV footage, the last images ever captured of Noah Donahoe alive, the 14-year-old boy is cycling through a housing estate in North Belfast completely naked. A motorist named Donna Blaine later told investigators that she saw a boy matching Noah's description on North Queen Street that evening. He appeared to have fallen from his bicycle and was lifting off the ground. She said he looked around as if embarrassed, then got back on the bike and rode off. He left his coat behind on the pavement. Another witness, Carrie Fraser, reported seeing a naked boy on a bicycle in the Northwood Road area and initially assumed it was a prank. Residents of Northwood Road later found Noah's bike lying on its side on the footpath. His helmet was found nearby. His trainers, jacket, and other items were scattered along the route. Then Noah vanished. Fiona Donahoe reported her son missing that night. Police launched a search that would span 6 days. Officers canvassed the area around Northwood Road in North Belfast where Noah was last seen. They reviewed CCTV footage from nearby businesses and leisure centers. Search teams moved through parks, undergrowth, and residential areas. But in those critical first 24 hours, the investigation would later be scrutinized for potential failures. At the ongoing inquest in 2026, evidence was presented that police officers checking CCTV at a leisure center near Noah's route may have missed footage of him because the camera's timestamp was approximately 40 minutes behind real time. Officers logged the footage as showing negative results, but Noah was on that footage. He had been there. They simply didn't see him, potentially because they were looking at the wrong time window. Noah's mobile phone was found by a member of the public in a park in North Belfast. When police took possession of the phone, it rang. The word "Mum" appeared on the screen. A detective constable answered and told Fiona that the phone was now in police custody. Meanwhile, search teams expanded their efforts into the underground storm drain system that runs beneath parts of North Belfast. The entrance to one storm drain was located near Northwood Road, near where Noah's bike had been found. A resident of the street later told the inquest that she had never been warned about the dangers of the culvert at the rear of her property. Her own young child had once been able to fit through the metal bars at the drain's entrance. On June 27, 2020, 6 days after Noah left home, his body was recovered from deep inside a storm drain in North Belfast, approximately 1 kilometer from where his bike had been found. A post-mortem examination determined the cause of death as drowning. The post-mortem conclusion was drowning. That is the medical fact. But the circumstances surrounding how a 14-year-old boy came to enter a storm drain naked after an 18-minute bicycle ride that began as a trip to meet friends. Those circumstances have never been satisfactorily explained. The first and most obvious question: why was Noah removing his clothes? The progressive shedding of items, backpack, then outerwear, then all clothing, suggests something was happening to him in real time. Was it a medical episode? A head injury from the fall off his bike? Some form of acute psychological distress? A reaction to a substance? Or was something done to him? CCTV footage also revealed something previously unknown. In October 2025, the coroner released footage showing that Noah had actually left his apartment once before that evening, at approximately 3:34 a.m. He was wearing flip-flops, a t-shirt, and shorts, and was carrying headphones. He turned toward Queen's University and walked away. 34 minutes later, at 4:08 a.m., he returned home barefoot and without his headphones. No one knows where he went or whom he may have met during that half hour in the middle of the night. This raised further questions about Noah's state of mind and whether his behavior that evening was part of a pattern. At the inquest, witnesses reported hearing screams on the night Noah disappeared. One resident of the area, Tanya Brown, testified that she was lying in bed at around midnight with her window open. She heard what sounded like a scream in the distance. She woke her husband, and when they went outside, she heard a second scream. Noah's closest friend, Charlie Rocks, told the inquest he had no concerns about Noah's mental health at the time. He described Noah as excited for the future. When asked whether Noah had ever struggled with his sexuality, Rocks said no. The two of them had discussed liking the same girl. The family has raised the possibility of foul play. Fiona Donahoe's legal team has pushed investigators on rumored reports, never substantiated, that Noah may have been assaulted near the city center before his rucksack was taken. These claims have not been confirmed, but the family wants every lead examined. Noah Donahoe's inquest began in January 2026 with jury selection and is currently ongoing at Laganside Courthouse in Belfast. His mother, Fiona, has attended every day of the proceedings. The case has generated enormous public support in Northern Ireland. Thousands of people have attended rallies and marches calling for transparency. Supporters organized under the banner of Noah's Army have demanded the release of all withheld evidence. In September 2022, Belfast City Council named a lagging gateway bridge in South Belfast the Noah Donahoe Bridge in his honor, following more than 1,000 public submissions. Fiona Donahoe has also established the Noah Donahoe Foundation in her son's memory. The questions at the heart of this case remain unanswered. What caused Noah to strip off his clothes during an 18-minute bike ride? Was it a medical crisis, a psychological episode, or something inflicted upon him? Or is he during the early hours of that same morning? How did he come to enter a storm drain? And could he have been saved if the CCTV footage had been correctly interpreted in those first critical hours? The coroner's inquest will determine the circumstances of how, when, and where Noah died. It will not assign criminal liability. But for Fiona Donahoe and the thousands who have rallied behind her, it may be the only chance to get something close to the truth. Noah Peter Donahoe was 14 years old.